We're really excited that Professor Scott Christianson is here with us today. And the title of his talk is the 411 on AI, ChatGPT, which he's going to tell us what all those things mean in just a few minutes. Scott is an associate teaching professor in the management department and director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And this is in the Pulaski College of Business. This is a university one that I pulled up, but it talks about his expertise, of course, in technology, information systems, project management, and education to help his students learn to think about these types of emerging issues like artificial intelligence, blockchain, which I don't know what that is, and everything internet. He's the recipient of numerous teaching awards and the author of many books, magazine articles, and online articles, and peer-reviewed journals. He's also been on a lot of radio and podcasts. As the CEI director, excuse me, he focuses on supporting his students as entrepreneurs and delivering entrepreneurship programs within the college. His background is an MA in Education and Human Development at George Washington University, and also a BA in Biology. I know Scott from when he ran for county commissioner a number of years ago, Scott, and it's interesting to see the changes he's made in his professional life. So thank you for being here.
Someone in this room helped him run for office. It was one of my first campaigns. Maybe my first one.
And
I think that was my very first one. Scott called me.
Right. So we know Scott from his involvement and continuing involvement with the Democrats. So thank you very much for being here today, Scott. We're excited.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to get to teach and to get to share what you know. I always find that I learn something as well. And so I am looking forward to this conversation with a lot of people that I know and some new people as well. So thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, I do talk a lot with my students about emerging technologies because one of the questions that I often ask is, what's the future going to be? What is the future going to be? How are these technologies going to affect our future lives, as far as our personal lives, our social lives, our political lives, and as well as the nature of work? Now, some of you may have noticed that from time to time, some technologies get a little bit overhyped. And in fact, there's something called the hype cycle that a group called Gardner has come out with, where they say, okay, well, you get this, a new technology gets in the press and you hear it's going to solve all the world's problems. It's going to be great. It's going to make, we're going to 3D print your car parts in the afternoon, and then you'll 3D print your dessert, for dinner tonight. And it's going to be wonderful. And then it turns out like, oh, it's actually doesn't work that way. It's really hard. Okay, so you enter this kind of trough where you're like, oh, this doesn't really work. But then sometimes we kind of move up the slope of productivity, and eventually we figure out, what is this technology good for? And AI has been around since really since even before computers. Okay, so some of you may have heard of Alan Turing. You may have seen The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch playing him. Excellent movie. He had some papers where he thought about, can machines think? And even before then, Lady Ada of Lovelace in the 1850s thought about, well, these are mechanical computers, but could they think? And she actually even thought about this idea for a long time ago. However, in today's day and age, we are experiencing a time of rapid change in this area of AI. And I want to just define AI in some broad terms for you all. An AI is basically a machine that exhibits some cognitive or decision-making ability. Okay, that's a big blanket. Okay. You watch the movies, it could be something like a Terminator robot, okay? It's making decisions on how to best kill us, right? So that is, that's a decision-making ability. And we see often in the movies that these types of computers are able to reason like a human can. However, that is not what we really see in today's world. We often see very specialized types of artificial intelligence that are focusing in on a very specific area. I think my friends over in computer science wouldn't like this example, but let me give the example of a Roomba, okay? So those little vacuuming robots. You and I could probably figure out how to program one of those. Okay, I hit a wall, back up, turn around. If you hit a wall again, back up, turn around. Okay, that could be an AI that a human could program. Okay, so these AI even includes, algorithms, okay, complex algorithms that we might calculate and be able to implement in some computers so it can make a decision about the future. However, there's been some really amazing advancements in this field where instead of us having to program that intelligence into a computer, what we instead do is we give it a bunch of data and we train it on that data. Okay, so if I want to create an algorithm that will simply look at a picture and tell me whether that is a picture of a dog, a cat, a raccoon, or a possum, well, I could program that, right? Okay, so a cat has 4 legs. Oh, whoops, darn it, a dog has 4 legs too. Okay, so now I got to figure out what are the feature differentials, all that. That's hard. And as Homer Simpson said, if it's hard, it's not worth doing. So instead, what I might do is I might give the computer some tools to recognize patterns. And some of you that are in statistics know that linear regression is a good way to do that kind of stuff. What I might do is give it some tools to recognize patterns and then give it 10,000 images that are of dogs that are labeled as dogs, 10,000 images that are of cats and are labeled as cats, 10,000 images of possums and 10,000 images of raccoons, and say, hey, computer, you figure out what the difference is. And it will do that, and it will do it very reliably, okay? And it will, if I give it a picture of a raccoon, it'll probably at the same rate that a human could identify a raccoon, it's going to identify it. Okay, that's a great application classification for an AI. However, what if I give it a picture of a deer and it says that's a dog? Okay, well, this is one of the problems with AI. It's only good for the areas in which it's trained. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. Now, when we're talking about this type of pattern recognition, I want to mention the fact that this is going to have a huge impact in certain areas that are very much driven by pattern recognition. So if you talk about jobs and how jobs are going to change with this, radiology is a field that is changing rapidly right now because if I want to detect, for example, pneumonia using a X-ray or some other imaging technology, that's what radiologists do. They recognize patterns, right? So you guys are already AI experts. You know already how it works. How in the world would we program an AI to beat radiologists at pneumonia detection? Well, we take 10,000 images of patients that have pneumonia, and we know they have pneumonia. We take 10,000 images of patients that don't have pneumonia, and we know they don't have pneumonia. We take 10,000 images of patients that we thought had pneumonia, but turns out they didn't. So those false positives, and then 10,000 images of people that we didn't think had pneumonia, but turned out they did. So those are the false negatives. And we can program those in there, and the computer can figure this out. And so this is why we see enormous changes happening in fields like radiology and pathology. Okay, this is another example where the pathologist is able to have an AI look at this and say, what are the important parts of this? Where's the suspicious tissue, right? And so this can have an enormous impact on these fields. Right now, this is actually a little bit outdated. I think this is actually from sometime this spring I pulled this data. But there's more than, I know it's more than 550 now, algorithms that have been cleared for use in healthcare. So you can see a large number of them are in radiology, cardiology, looking often at patterns of electrical patterns of the heart. Okay, so a lot of different areas are looking at this. So it's going to be a tremendous advantage to, I think, all of us very quickly. That's going to really change medicine in some ways. Now, probably what is of most interest is this area of generative AI that you've heard a lot of since last December. And the the Kleenex of general AI, Kleenex is just a brand name, right, for tissue paper. But the Kleenex of generative AI is ChatGPT. Okay, and so let me pull that up right now. And there's nothing like actually doing stuff. And I'm going to do a few things, and then I know there's a couple things in the chat, or at least one. I tend to just look at those in different breaks because otherwise it interrupts my mind too much. I get distracted by it. So I will come back if you type any questions in the chat. I will come back to those and look at them.
If I see something urgent, I will interrupt you. If
Okay, that would, you can be, Sarah, you'll be my TA for the day.
You bet.
That would be great.
Been there, done that.
So a ChatGPT is what we call a large language model. Now remember that I was just talking about this idea of classification, and I said that it might involve statistics, right? And linear regression. And some people criticize AI and they say, or machine learning, that's what I was talking about there. Hey, that's just statistics on steroids. And they're not wrong. Okay, so I want you to keep that in your mind as we're looking at stuff, that this is based on probabilities. Okay, once again, just kind of keep that in your mind. So ChatGPT, write an essay. So this is the interface. There's two versions, ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 3. Write an essay about Harry Truman. Okay. So we'll see what it comes back with. Okay. So it's now write an essay about Harry S. Truman. Okay. Now, it's writing a lot of stuff here. We'll give it a little time. But while it's finishing its essay, I want you to think about this as a statistical output. It is writing what it thinks statistically would be the best result for an essay about Harry S. Truman. However, it doesn't know who Harry S. Truman really is. It doesn't know what a war is. It doesn't know what a president is. It doesn't know what the United States is. Okay? It knows how to string together words using statistical models in order to come up with a result that may fit this task that it's been given. Okay, so there's a rather famous essay that calls this a stochastic parrot. Well, is stochastic, well, that's kind of another word or synonym for statistics, right? Okay, so there's a stochastic parrot. It's parroting back to you things. When your parrot says, look at the red car, does it really understand automobiles and roads and traffic and stuff? Does it really understand the color spectrum? Probably not, right? I don't want to diss on your parrot, okay? But it is probably just doing what it thinks you want, okay? The other thing here is this is probably going to give a very good result, okay? And having read a couple biographies of Truman and paying attention in history class, I would say this is probably accurate, okay? But it's once again giving the statistical output. You may have heard the term hallucination referred to when these models output things that's wrong. Okay? It's not hallucinating like a person. It's just thinking, oh my gosh, this would sound awesome if I said this. Okay? So if I ask it to write an essay with citations about the history of Muleskinners, well, let's try it. Write it's probably not going to know what it is. History of the Muleskinners group in Columbia, Missouri, and use citations. Yeah. So it doesn't know what the Muleskinners group is. But let's have it write something else. Write a history of the Missouri River. Oops. And okay. Let me try it again here. So once again, it's going to write this in the citations. However, it's given me a citation of 1 there. So we should look at that citation at the end, and then 2. Okay, so it has used some citations, and 3. It's getting better at this, but when it was first released, it would just totally make up those citations. Okay, and Wayne Breckus, I know that he tried some of these and he found that tried to trace down the paper and it wasn't there at all. Okay, so is this true? I don't know if that's true or not. Here it's actually giving a link to look at those, so even including the State Historical Society. Okay. So sometimes it makes stuff up. Now you can do some pretty amazing stuff. So let's say explain to me how the electoral college works like I was a 5-year-old. This had helped me pass David Luthold's class all those years ago. So here it makes up a story. You're playing a big game with all your friends. Okay. So it's trying to come up with something that will interpret the way the electoral colleges, how it functions. Okay. So you can see that while the first part of that example, where I had to write an essay about Harry Truman, might freak out faculty members like myself, when you start to look at this, you can start to see like, oh, well, maybe if Prof C wasn't so good at his explanation in class, students might be able to use things like this to actually help with their own education. Okay. So in fact, Khan Academy, which is an online academy that helps students, I think it's all open access. It's actually started to incorporate an AI into it. You can also have it write things. So let's say write a, well, obviously I can have it write things. Write a social media, let's say Instagram post about a fundraiser for Steven Weber for who is running for Missouri State Senate. The event will happen on October 1, 2023. Okay. Okay. Nice little hashtags, vote for change, stronger together. I don't know where it's doing those things. But here is your social media I'm sorry, Dave, I should have picked you. David Rathel, we could do the house for 44th as well. Okay, so this is kind of formulaic. Maybe I want to edit some stuff, but that's pretty good, right? I mean, that's not half bad. Okay, so there's a lot of things where this can kind of, once again, it's recognizing a pattern. There's a certain pattern to Instagram posts, to press releases. It can write that stuff very well. But one of the things that you need to do when I was talking about these hallucinations and such is that you need to make sure that you know what it's talking about. So if you want to write down the first rule of using generative AI is never ask it a question you don't know the answer to. Okay. That sounds silly, but there's a lot of stuff. I've used it when I'm like, okay, shoot, I've got to write 2 pages on this. I've already written 50. I'll just input my 50 pages and say, reduce this down to 2 pages for me. Okay, and then I can read it and I know what it is. Our researchers here are using this in their role as tenured faculty. Some tenured faculty, they will, well, almost all tenured faculty are going to have to review other people's articles for journal publication. So what a lot of them are doing is kind of taking their notes as they read through the proposed journal article, and then they're putting it in here and saying, hey, summarize this for me. And then they look at it and decide, well, does that really reflect what I think of that article? And if so, they'll modify it a little and change it. You can also have it rewrite this in 50 words. Okay, so there's a shorter version. So we've learned a couple of things. I really didn't touch on this since the recording began, but beforehand we were working with something called Dolly, okay, which generated some paintings here of a group of Democrats in the style of Thomas Hart Benton. I mentioned here that somebody that knew more about art would be able to get a better result than I did. Same sort of thing with any questions we put in here. If I am an expert in a certain area, I will be able to get a much better result out of this. So we've got a couple things in the chat. Let me see. Computation. Yeah, so computation can be, an algorithm can be considered artificial artificial intelligence. And for many, many years, that's the way things were pursued until this whole era of machine learning came about, well, quite a number of decades ago, but it was really within the last 10 years that some developments to help it learn, and we call it deep learning, help it learn on its own, became very, very good.
Okay, but all problems of the philosophy of mind will be solved by computational theories?
The philosophy of mind. I don't know that I could go that far.
Is my color perception a function of a computation?
I don't know. Are you living in a simulation?
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, the Wall Street Journal has been creating articles using what they call an AI. It is not like this type of technology. It is a technology that is very formulaic, and they use it only for sports and for earnings calls, because those are very formulaic writing. Okay, and it's actually an algorithm, and you can kind of piece it together. Okay, so it's not learning on its own. It's going to once again be very kind of formulaic. Now,
then my emotional response to the color. See, you can keep backing it up, but are just for my own intellectual edification, are you, after your research and all these years, committed to a computational theory of mind as an explanation for all the problems in the philosophy of mind?
No,
Just so
I
I
don't.
just,
You're out of my area. You're out of.
okay,
I'm not adept there, Dave.
okay,
There are a
sorry.
lot of. Yeah, that's okay. There are a lot of big philosophical questions, and I'm ill-equipped to deal with those. But let's talk about how do we detect whether something is generated by an AI or whether it is real, quote unquote, real, generated by a human. Well, it's very hard to do that. And there's been several AI generators that AI detectors that have come out. One called ChatGPT 0. Another one is a system that we already use here at the University of Missouri that is called Turnitin, that has already added AI capabilities. So in theory, if Herb was in my class and he wrote use ChatGPT, I would be able to detect it. However, these are notoriously unreliable. Okay, and there was in fact a headline where a Texas A&M professor failed the entire class because he used one of these detectors and it said it was all written by an AI, but he didn't use it correctly. Okay. And so it is very hard to detect this. You put in the book of Genesis into one of these detectors, it will tell you it was written by an AI. Okay. Now, that's because it's very formulaic. Writing in Genesis is kind of formulaic, right? So it's very, very difficult to determine whether something was generated. Okay, and that's why we're starting to get into these problems concerning politics and elections. I could have these tools generating content that might show that, let's have it write a letter to Josh Hawley about how disturbed we are about whatever this is. Okay, we could write thousands of letters, okay, very, very quickly. Okay, you think about the disinformation campaigns that happened in 2016, where you had all these people often in Eastern European countries that were generating all these blogs, generating all these Facebook posts, and they were being paid to do so to create this kind of disinformation campaign. You think about Russia being able to do this type of stuff, confusing us, making us not understand what people are truly saying or doing. And this kind of brings us to another use of AI that's outside of the generative AI. We could spend any amount of time, for days talking about any one of these areas here. But there's another area that you may have heard of called deep fakes. Okay, and I think Alice brought that up when we were chatting about this presentation here. And let me pull up a little bit of information about that, maybe a couple of examples of some deep fakes. Deep fake technology is evolving very rapidly. This is my most recent version. Let me see if I can find that. Okay, good. Here it is. So you may have seen this deep fake here. Pull it up. So a deep fake is using audio and video to train an AI. And then what it's doing, it is actually usually two AIs kind of working together. What it's doing is it's generating a statistical model of what this person sound and look like if they were saying these things that they haven't ever said. Okay, so let me make sure I'm sharing the sound so you can hear this.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Okay, so that
Pretty good.
was, and that was a deep fake, and that's interesting to see. And as a Democratic group, this group might be inclined to believe that Obama might say something like that, or we would want him to say something like that. So we run into this problem of a confirmation bias, right? So that kind of increases our bubble, okay? But the thing that I want to kind of point out here is these deep fakes are synthetic performance that appears to be that of a real, known or unknown person. But these things tend to improve at an exponential rate. So this deep fake was made about 3 years ago, took about 60 hours of compute time, about 20 people, and about 25 days to, do the recording, test it out, get all the algorithms set up the way it worked. But these things tend to improve at an exponential rate. And digital applications also quickly become cheap, easy, and democratized. They become available to anybody. So this one was made with a team of people that had a high level of technical expertise. You may have also seen this deep fake.
In this reel, you're going to see my amigo, Chris Umi. He's going to introduce to you the wonderful world of deepfakes, how AI and VFX are unlocking the future of our imagination. What's up, TikTok? You guys cool?
So that is, Sarah, did you guys see that okay, the Tom Cruise one? Let's see.
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got about 4 screens open, though. The pictures keep getting smaller and smaller from my perspective.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'll reshare that.
We're seeing your whole desktop, so I hope you haven't been doing anything naughty.
Oh, okay. No, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I shared the wrong one. Okay, desktop 2. There we go. That's what I wanted to share. Okay, sorry about that.
There we are.
But this is let me just turn the volume down. We can let it keep going while we're discussing it. This is another deep fake that imitates Tom Cruise's voice as well as his face. Okay, so this is an actor, not an actor, but somebody who's an impersonator of Tom Cruise. So he was able to do a lot of the same movements, and they just had to deep fake his face. And so this was done by one person in about 24 hours. Okay. Once again, this is about a year and a half old now. Okay. You may have also seen another one. This is another one that was America's Got Talent.
Good friend Daniel Emmett on stage, who you guys are familiar with from.
Very good singer. So how did you meet?
We met because, of course, I'm fans of what they do online.
So here's the singer, and what they're going to do is they're going to deep fake that guy in real time. Okay, so now you're seeing something that is happening in real time. Still kind of janky, okay? On that Obama video, you would actually notice some of the artifacts around his face, but it doesn't look all that great. But once again, just think of the fact of how what's it going to look in 2 years from now? What's it going to look like 3 years from now? So there's a big concern about deep fakes being used in elections to actually say or do something that didn't actually happen. Let me see if I can play this. I hate hedgehogs. I think they are so ugly. Now, who's that saying that? Well, it's me, right? Okay. I just took a bunch of my videos that unfortunately my students had to watch during our COVID era, and plugged those into an AI. It took about 24 hours. And I said, I want you to write, I want you to say that I hate hedgehogs. So it did a pretty good job of me saying that. Now, would I ever say that? No, I would never say such a thing. I love hedgehogs. But that is the problem here, is that you might have it look like I was saying something or sound like I'm saying something. Think about this with a telemarketing thing. Oh my gosh, Herb, did you know that Scott Christianson hates hedgehogs? Are you really prepared to vote for somebody who hates hedgehogs so much? I mean, listen to this audio. Okay. Yeah, Herb. You're muted right now. Sorry. You're gonna have to unmute there.
I said I was going to ask you a different question, so why don't you finish your thought? You had a thought in process.
No, I was just saying that, think about telemarketing calls, think about the ways that a deep fake might be used, especially on a small scale like presiding commissioner elections.
Well, first, it's great to see you again. And I can't but ask you what I think is a very important question, not yet touched. There was a very interesting article, I can't remember if it was The Economist or the New York Times this last week, on the artificial intelligence market, software market, and its emerging shape. Creating a model is one thing. Training it has become very expensive, and the pace of that cost increase and demands for computing power is growing at twice the rate of the improvements in chips. Therefore, the next generation chat is old hat. The next generation, the investment will be a minimum of $1 billion to train, with a program cost of $10 billion. This is beyond the ability of the Harvard MIT Big Data Committee and my friend Gary King, and only the biggest corporations probably can do it. And what does that imply for us with that kind of centralized control by a few corporations?
Yeah, so that's a big issue. And unfortunately, I wish we could, Alice was talking about the government having the guts to start regulating. Our Congress hasn't been able to pass even a basic privacy law, and that's been the debate on that has been the last 15 years. It looks like the EU might be much more effective in being able to bring forth some regulation on this. There is a book, it's a little bit old now, by Kao-Fu Lee, called AI Superpowers, and that book talks about exactly what Herb is talking about, this idea that you might have an AI haves and have-nots. Okay. In that case, in the book, he's looking at it in terms of nation states. But you're exactly right, because one system may come to dominate everything, and that could have numerous problems. It could also be good if we had one algorithm that could detect whether you're going to have a heart attack, and it was highly reliable, and that could be shared around the world. That would be a pretty nice thing for humanity. Okay, but yeah, politics are going to come into this. Google right now, if I recall right, has more lobbyists on Capitol Hill than there are staffers. Okay, so it is a big battle between Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and Apple to some degree. Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if you're a journalist, like, how do you even know that you're talking to the person that you think you're talking to? It's tricky, right? I mean, where do we go? You're trying to do the nightly news. You want to quote. I guess it's kind of like when the bank shouldn't be calling you. You should be calling them. But what if somebody's intercepted that? You might not even know who you're speaking to.
Right. So deep fake voices have in fact been used to scam lots of money. They've scammed. These are targeted at high value targets, but now we're starting to see it move down the line. Okay, let's deep fake Scott's voice and call his mom, who lives at home, and say, oh, I don't know what happened, but they say that I hit somebody and killed them. Will you please talk to this person's my lawyer. Okay, my mom gets those calls all the time. There's going to be a lot of scams that are going to hit. This is another article that was a little bit a little time ago, but they basically use this deepfake technology to impersonate a journalist. Okay, because at the time of Zoom, they actually interviewed this person. Okay, there's also some horrible ways in this is being used to create what we call non-consensual pornography. So people swapping a woman's face onto an image or a video of a pornographic actor, just the same way that Tom Cruise face swap happened. And once again, remember this idea that it becomes cheaper and more democratized. We often think that's a good thing, but maybe not in this case. There's also been several examples I found. This is a journalist that was in an Arab country and was not only had a deepfake pornography created of her, but also she was doxxed, so people knew her address and was under threat of violence. Okay, and this even came up more recently in the election in Turkey. You may have seen that there was a runoff election in Turkey. Let me pull this article up right quick. In this, this is an article from before the election. Erdogan did run that election or win that election. However, his opponent accused Russia of meddling in the country's election to support Erdogan, citing concrete information that Russia fabricated deep fake sex videos that forced another candidate to withdraw. Okay, so especially I would say even here, if you had a deep fake video of someone engaging in homosexual acts, or especially in the Middle East where that's it's not very good if you're not if you are for those folks. So so Scott Crystal says there's been examples of that. So yeah, this is really problematic. Okay, now there is some things being done. Okay, California has taken the lead on this. This actually sunsetted already, but it was prohibited the use of deepfakes to influence political campaigns. And then there was another one which addresses making it a criminal offense to post a deepfake of someone in this non-consensual pornography. Okay, so yeah, I think there's big push that our current regulatory frameworks are, Pam was mentioning this, our current regulatory frameworks are probably not set up to deal with this technology. So the FTC, Lena Khan leads that organization right now. They have had some wins, but going back to Herb's point here, that when you look at the scale of this stuff, if I have a $5 billion fine and I'm Facebook, that's a parking ticket. Okay, and if I could park downtown in Columbia and get a 5-cent parking ticket for not paying the meter, I'd park there 24 hours. Okay, and it would be, so economically, so much advantage to Facebook to do what they do to violate things until you start to say, okay, we're going to make this 100 billion. We're going to make it something that hurts. And right now, that doesn't seem to be any way to bring that back in. Of course, a lot of our politicians receive money from these tech firms. Tech firms have for many years enjoyed a kind of a halo that these are innovators and they're creating jobs and moving fast and breaking things, and aren't they the cool guys on the block, and don't we want to be like them and encourage more people to be like them? I don't know, maybe not. So that's why you will not find me on Facebook, by the way. I deleted my account many years ago when the FTC had their first $5 billion fine. I thought, this is stupid, I'm out. So anyway, I have let me see if I have any more highlights to hit on, and then we'll see if we have any more questions about it. Um, I don't know why this isn't working. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So I wish I had some. One other thing I wanted to mention about deep fakes is, deep fakes exist. So what if there was a video of me saying that I hate hedgehogs, and it was real? And I come to a Muleskinners meeting, and you guys are, Scott, I contributed to your campaign. Now you're telling me you hate hedgehogs. I can say, no, that was a deep fake. That's what we call the liar's dividend. Okay. The fact that there's lots of misinformation out there allows me to use as an excuse. Okay. We've seen Trump do this many times. Okay. So there's even more complicating factors going on here. I wish I could say that the future is bright, but I think in many ways there's some dark times ahead. But that's where we need to educate ourselves. We need to get involved. I would encourage everyone to sign up for a ChatGPT account and to play with it. Okay, to just start playing with it, because I think you'll find it useful just to know what it is. Okay, here's another article from The Guardian about disinformation and AI. Yeah, so I'll take any other questions you guys might have. Yeah, David.
Scott, thanks very much for a very informative talk. One of my question is, do they charge for ChatGPT? And if not, how do they make money?
Okay, so right now, there is a subscription that you can get. I pay $20 a month because when I do demos like this, I want it to be available. If you sign up, David, you can get a free version, but you may go to log in and do something, and it'll say, our servers are too busy right now, check back later. Okay, so that's, yeah, so they're actually not making money right now. They are losing money, but they have big investments from Microsoft that is starting to build this into their search engine. And you'll notice that Google has already started to do this. They're building this into their search engine, and that's where they'll make a lot of money. Okay. And Microsoft is going to build this into a lot of their tools like email, PowerPoint. I could, in fact, the idea is that I would be able to say, here's a report I wrote. Or David, let's say you wrote a paper that you had published as a professor. You wrote that. Then you could say, make a 40-slide PowerPoint for me based on this paper. And PowerPoint would craft that for you. You'd probably have to tweak it some, but it would get the work, 50% there. And so that's where a lot of these companies are making enormous investments because they see some future potential down the road. But it's kind of a wild west right now. Once again, that hype cycle. Yeah, David.
Just me, David.
Yeah.
Okay, just to add on to Professor Lutholt's question and observation. I played around with ChatGPT 3. There's no mind there, so it never could recognize a logical contradiction. And then my oldest kid is in tech, and I was out in California, and I got to talk to him, and I got to meet a couple of his tech head friends. They made an interesting statement about the reluctance of businesses to use ChatGPT 3 because it acquires information, and they're reluctant to give up proprietary information to the collective consciousness. Businesses want to have their AI for their things. They're not so much interested in contributing to the collective consciousness or the basis of knowledge. I was amused by that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I found anecdotally from the guests that I had into my class last semester, that the banks, Carfax, I know basically says you can't use this because they don't want you to. There's two issues there. One is they don't want you to accidentally upload something that is, about Scott or about somebody, right? So some privacy concerns, but also proprietary, their methodologies, things like that. So yeah, you find that a lot of these are starting to develop their internal systems for doing this type of work. Yeah, Scott.
Hi, Scott. This was great. I've been playing with this for a while with all kinds of different versions, including the drawing part, where they'll draw different pictures and everything. In fact, just for fun, I had to draw some wine labels and enter Le Bourgeois winemaking or wine label contest. Although I did let them know. I haven't heard back, but there's still a chance I could end up a winner. But the reason I got back on is, or to ask, a few weeks ago, 60 Minutes had a thing where they talk with the head of Microsoft and other people on AI, and then they talked, of course, about deep fakes and all these different things. And they were talking about setting something up. I don't know how they were going to do it, where you'd be able to tell if this was a fake.
Mm-hmm.
I have doubts they'd be able to really pull that off, but if you could discuss what you know on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Facebook has some algorithms that are pretty good. The reason that they're good is because Facebook sees a lot of data. It has a lot of that training data. It knows what's out there. I'm not so worried about like a deep fake of President Biden because President Biden is tracked every day, okay? But it is these cases, and there's been several other cases that I could cite of deep fakes being used in small elections, okay? So the mayor of Ashland, okay, what happens when it starts to be used there? Well, we probably don't have a camera on the mayor of Ashland 24/7, right? The way Joe Biden does. There, once again, I think those are kind of the concerns. Scott, in some ways, I think we're going to enter a zero trust world. So we're going to have a way to trace back the origination of any images or videos. Adobe is currently working on this so that essentially using a cryptographic means that you would have a signature, if you will, when a video is created, and you would then know if it was been modified along the way. And maybe certain modifications will be considered normal. Like when Photoshop first came out, it was considered, journalists could not Photoshop, use those tools in any way. But now color correction, other things like that are considered to be normal ways of processing an image, and they don't disclose that on every image now. So I do think we're kind of entering this zero trust world. I think that where we're going to have to prove identity constantly. And if you are working at the University of Missouri, you have grown to hate your Authenticator app because I have to use this about, I don't know how many times a day to get some code that I have to enter to log into something, even though I'm already logged into something else. And it about drives me batty. It's my #1 app on my phone. I've thought about just, throwing my phone away and getting a, just an old flip phone, but I'm like, oh, I won't be able to log into anything. So yeah, and I think that's kind of where things will head. So I think there's some dark times ahead. As far as the future in general, I'm still very hopeful. Yeah. But we are going to have some very challenging times. Great questions.
Yeah, I don't see any others. We've got about 4 more minutes till 1. So going once, going twice on the questions. Thank you so much for being here. This was fascinating. I knew it would be. Alice, are you raising your hand? You're muted, I think.
Could you talk a little bit about what steps Europe has taken? And we're, of course, not there because I occasionally see articles.
Yeah, so Europe has implemented a privacy law, and Europe is far ahead on a lot of different things. They also recently passed an AI first swing at an AI regulation, and it also protects basically your data being used to train an AI. You may have seen in the news as well that there's a lot of lawsuits that are currently being waged against, especially those image generation tools that Scott was mentioning. A lot
Go
of
Sarah Silverman. Go Sarah Silverman.
yes, she is one of many lawsuits that are happening right now. So
Great, thank you.
yeah, I've put also the my email in there if you want to contact me, if I can be a resource. I'm always happy to geek out about emerging technologies. There's my newsletter that I report on things I've been working on in terms of emerging technologies. And Catherine, no, I haven't seen that particular Amanpour discussion. I will look that up though. It's hard to keep up in these areas. It's evolving so fast. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been super interesting. I mean, just even watching you play around in real time was, because I've been meaning to do it and I just been putting it off. So I'm like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, that's not so hard.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
good.
very cool. David, Mallory?
A quick question, since I've never set up a ChatGPT account yet, and that sounds interesting. Have you tried, Scott, telling it to use poor grammar? Does that work?
Oh yes, yes. You can ask it to include mistakes or write this like I'm a 3-year-old, or you can say write this like a particular author that it might know.
I want a B- on this paper. Let me slide on that.
Don't make it too good. It'll be, or they'll know I'm, because that's usually my clue as a teacher, right? When the paper's suddenly too good from a certain writer that I've already seen work from.
Yeah. So yeah, you can introduce things like that. There are also algorithmic rewriters, okay, that will rewrite a paper that and there are services for students now. Well, they will guarantee that they will have a paper that will pass any AI detection tools. Now, some of my students said, I used to teach a 500-person class, and we were discussing this at the beginning of last semester, and they said, yeah, but Prof C, some people pay money and have their stuff written. I'm like, yeah,
By a person.
Yeah, by a person. So is this a democratizing event? So now we're just leveling the playing field so everybody can have someone else write their essay for them? And that's an interesting idea. Once again, I think as educators, we got to rethink. I think higher education in many ways has kind of lost the script on the way that we have kind of turned into a factory.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to our foundations. And a lot of that is asking questions of students that require investigation and require critical thought. And it's not going to be something that I can predict what their outcome is.
If students are willing to pay to not have to do the work that they're paying to do, what does that say about education? They're clearly not here to be educated. They're there to get that piece of paper. So somehow the values have gotten askew.
Yeah. Well, a student also said, if ChatGPT can do my work for me, maybe, you're not designing a class well. It's got a good point.
So.
A professor friend said to me that she thought they would go to more oral kinds of tests, but when you have lots of students, how could a professor do that? I mean,
well, that's like I said, I think we've kind of lost the script on our kind of factory approach to education, and we need more. We've got some great professors on this call. We need more interaction. Student success is directly related to interaction with professors, and these 500 people classes, it is extremely hard to develop that relationship.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. This has been so great. We want to be respectful of your time and let you get back to whatever you need to do. You're welcome to hang around. We're going to move on to a very short business meeting where we have some announcements.
I'm going to have to run, but thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. This has been fantastic. And I did learn some new stuff, and I'm going to have to look a lot more into philosophy of mind and things like that.
Cool.
So take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.